Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
So you know what day today is. Today is the day that I answer your questions. It's the Ask Me Anything episode of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. And, you know, but before I get into the questions and the answers to those questions, I just want to sort of, think out loud for a moment. So I had noticed a couple of days ago when I was listening to something on ESPN radio, the Right Time with Bomani Jones. And I realized that he keeps, mentioning the name of the show and his name. And I realized that I don't do that on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. I intentionally stopped mentioning the name of the show during the segments once I added the liners going into and out of the commercial breaks. So you hear Epic Movie Voice Guy. That is, unless you're in the fans program, in which case you don't hear the commercials and you don't hear Epic Movie Voice Guy say Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. So what I've decided to do, or rather I posted on the Facebooks asking my friends, I said, hey, I realized that I don't refer to myself in my podcast. Is that something I should do? And it was overwhelming. Yes, you should refer to yourself. So I will begin in the future introducing myself at the beginning of the show. That way you know who you're listening to. So this is Darryl W. Perry. I'm your host. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. And if you're new to the show, something that we do every Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything, where I answer your questions. And I love the wide variety of questions that I receive. This week, I have two questions. I will get to the more fun question first. The question was posted on Facebook, actually in a comment to a friend's post on Facebook. Apparently, there's a Twitter channel or a Twitter feed, whatever, called OMG Facts. And they post weird, random facts. And one of the facts that they posted a few days ago was a Massachusetts court ruled that a sandwich must have 2 slices of bread, legally barring tacos, burritos, and quesadillas from being called a sandwich. So the question, Darryl, is this true? And if so, how did this ruling come to be? Did someone sue over the right to call something a sandwich? Well, yes, I am here to tell you, yes, this is true. And, well, it's not necessarily that someone sued over the right to call something a sandwich. More so, it was someone trying to use the courts for protectionism. What do I mean by protectionism? Well, there was a shopping center, presumably it's still there, the White City Shopping Center in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. In 2001, so 14 years ago, there was a dispute between Panera Bread and the owners of the White City Shopping Center in Shrewsbury, where, as with most shopping centers, they will not rent to someone that directly competes with one of their other tenants. And that kind of makes sense to some extent. Well, Panera alleged that Qdoba Mexican Grill was a direct competitor, and, well, it wound up going to court. Now, I've got 2 articles here, one from Fox News and one from a real estate attorney, and let me jump into the article from the real estate attorney just briefly before getting into the article from Fox News, because they sort of cover this from different angles a little bit. So again, the dispute arose in 2001. The court ruling came out in November of 2006. So this was like a 5-year legal battle over what the hell a sandwich is. In August of 2006, the shopping center owners signed a 2,100 square foot lease with Qdoba Mexican Grill, and Panera complained that the Mexican chain's burritos violate its sandwich exclusivity clause. The landlord sought a declaratory judgment from the court that the new Qdoba lease would not violate the existing Panera lease. Okay, so I stand corrected in something. The initial lease was from 2001. The lawsuit originated in August of 2006, so it was not a 5-year legal battle as I initially thought based on the wording of this article. And yes, I did read this beforehand, and I got confused then as well, thinking, oh, wow, this thing spent 5 years in court. I honestly was thinking, like, how does it take 5 years to determine what the hell a sandwich is? But it was only a couple of months. But that's because the ever slow, swift hand of justice. So Panera, in August of 2006, filed a lawsuit against the owners of the White City Shopping Center in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, saying you can't put a Qdoba in here because that violates our sandwich exclusivity clause. The landlord sought declaratory judgment from the court that the new Qdoba lease would not violate the existing Panera lease, arguing, quote, burritos, tacos, and quesadillas are not sandwiches. The Panera franchisees filed a counterclaim seeking to enforce the lease exclusivity clause. Food experts for Qdoba were consistent in their testimony that a burrito is just a burrito. One of the experts, Chris Schlesinger, the owner of a restaurant in nearby Cambridge that sells sandwiches, described a sandwich as having, quote, European roots and generally recognized as 2 pieces of leavened bread, while a burrito is specific to Mexico and typically contains hot ingredients rolled into a flat, unleavened tortilla. Judith A. Quick, who previously worked as a deputy director of the Standards and Labeling Division at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, said in her affidavit, the USDA views a sandwich as a separate and distinct food product from a burrito or a taco. And now you might be thinking to yourself, really, this had to go to court, but the way court works is anytime there's a lawsuit, there is supposed to be a hearing on the merits of the lawsuit. And, well, when you're hearing the merits of a suit, you want to be able to back up your side. And so they brought in food experts to testify on exactly what a sandwich is. Panera, in affidavits, argued for a more expansive definition of sandwich, which has not been expressly defined in the lease, saying a flour tortilla qualifies as bread and that a food product with bread is a sandwich. So Panera says anything that has flour that might kind of maybe be bread is a sandwich if you put something in it as a filling. Well, I'll get into this a little bit more in just a moment here on Beat of the Radio.
The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent, but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous, but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
So before I finish telling you about the ruling on whether or not a taco can be considered a sandwich, well, I already kind of told you at the very beginning because that was the premise of the question. But before I continue telling you about this case and the ruling from the judge, Superior Court Judge Jeffrey Locke, who, well, he decided to cite Webster's Dictionary. But before I tell you about that, I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. For over 35 years, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They also take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on investing and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 850-478-5270 or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. So let me now jump over from the article written by the real estate attorneys to the article from Fox News. They include in here that Qdoba is owned by Jack in the Box, and Jack in the Box obviously sells sandwiches. It is not known to me whether or not Panera cited the fact that Qdoba is owned by a sandwich company in their claims that Qdoba sells sandwiches. But Locke, or rather, but before I get into his decision, there were court papers filed by Panera, which has more than 900 restaurants. They argued for a broad definition, again, saying that a flour tortilla is or should be considered bread, and that a food product with bread as a filling is a sandwich. There was the chef from nearby Cambridge, again, who said, "I know of no chef or culinary historian that would call a burrito a sandwich. Indeed, the notion would be absurd to any credible chef or culinary historian." Now, the judge, Superior Court Judge Jeffrey Locke, cited Webster's Dictionary as well as testimony from a chef and former high-ranking federal agriculture official in ruling that Qdoba's burritos and other offerings are not sandwiches. In his ruling, he wrote, well, there's an 8-page ruling, and here's part of what he wrote. "A sandwich is not commonly understood to include burritos, tacos, and quesadillas, which are typically made with a single tortilla and stuffed with a choice filling of meat, rice, and beans." The article from the real estate attorneys, they add that, well, no, they've got the same quote from Judge Locke. They do add here that in his 8-page decision, Locke ruled that burritos and tacos were not expressly provided for in the exclusivity clause of the lease, and said that the term sandwich was not broad enough to have been violated by the sale of a burrito. Panera had 30 days to file an appeal, and I could find no evidence that they did so. So apparently Panera is happy with the legal definition of sandwich, or at least the Panera executives or the franchisee in this case who was filing the suit. He's happy enough with the definition. Maybe he realized, holy crap, I just spent a bunch of money to wind up finding out that, yeah, burrito is not a sandwich. So that's how the burrito is not a sandwich lawsuit came about. The next question that I have is about something that sort of has me a little troubled. And I'm not the only one that is troubled by this. There are lots of people that are troubled by this, including one golden stallion, the baddest boy on the blockchain, Brian Sovereign. And I feel sort of privileged and honored to say that I'm actually the one that brought this to his attention. And he spoke somewhat at length about it on Sovereign Tech this past Saturday. I will post the link to that show in the show notes so that you can hear his take on this as well. But I just will give this warning that Sovereign Tech is not a radio-friendly program. There are words that he uses that will not be allowed on broadcast radio, will not be allowed on iHeart Radio, which is one of the many outlets that you can find this show, Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I want to go listen, take a listen. It's a good show, but there might be some language that would offend some people or might wind up causing people to take a step back if they're not expecting the language. So what exactly am I talking about? What did I bring to Brian Sovereign's attention that has him upset, it has me upset, and it's got a lot of other people upset? Well, it's this new thing called the Blockchain Alliance. This was brought to my attention by a friend of mine who asked, Darryl, what do you think about this? And she sent me two links. One was to a Reddit thread making the announcement. The other is to an article from coincenter.org. And let me read their announcement, and then I will intersperse my thoughts throughout the reading of this announcement. And the announcement dated October 22nd. Like email or the web, Bitcoin is an open internet protocol. This means that anyone can plug into the network and easily transact with anyone else in the world. This creates new opportunities for people who previously did not have access to financial markets, and it also opens up a new world of beneficial, permissionless innovation. It also means, however, that criminals can use the open network for illicit purposes, just as criminals use email today. Okay, so right off the bat, they begin very, very good by saying, like email or the web, Bitcoin is an open internet protocol. Good, fine, great. Things should be open on the internet. There should not be, various sort of regulations of, this packet of information is more information or more important than this packet of information. No, all little packets of ones and zeros should be treated equally on the internet or on the internets, plural, because there should be many of them. But I digress. And then the paragraph sort of takes a turn for the worse, if you will. It says, it also means, however, that criminals can use the open network for illicit purposes, just as criminals use email today. And it's that sort of twist to where it takes that turn that got me sort of curious. Oh, hey, wait a second. Like, criminals can use anything. Criminals use, I don't know, let's see, telephones. Criminals use roads. Criminals use Federal Reserve notes, the dollars printed by the central bank here in the U.S. In other countries, they probably use, the official currency printed by central banks in other countries. But that does not mean that you need to create regulations, because criminals, here's a little secret. Criminals don't care what the regulations are. They're going to do their crime anyway. But are they talking about real criminals here? They don't. I'll let you know.
The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent, but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous, but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hypercronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hypercronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hypercronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
So before I continue with my diatribe, and I'm only one paragraph into this thing, and I'm already flustered and ranting. But before I continue ranting about these not so criminals, I want to make sure that I tell you about something that I mentioned at the very beginning of the show. You heard me mention that there are ways you can get commercial-free versions of the podcast. And it's not just this podcast. You can also get commercial-free versions of the daily newscast that I produce. You can do that by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month, and you can do that at fans.fppradio.com. There are perks. You get the commercial-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. You get commercial-free versions of FPP Radio News. You also, every month, get in your mailbox a copy of the physical newspaper that I have been publishing for a couple of years now, the FPP News. You get all of that and so much more. Check it out. Join the Fans program. And then you can listen to this. You don't hear the commercials, and it makes life better for everybody, right? Fans.fppradio.com. So who are the criminals that this guy from the Coin Center is talking about that use Bitcoin and email? Well, it's not people necessarily that are committing violent crimes. It's not people that are going into people's houses, breaking things, smashing stuff, and stealing valuables. It's not people that are mugging you while you're trying to walk down the street. No. These are people that are committing the real crime, which is a violation of some state edict. That they're not harming anyone per se. That they're not, committing aggression against someone. They're doing something that the state doesn't want you to do. And that's really the only crime. That is why somebody that is selling cannabis winds up getting more prison time than someone who molests a child. That's why Ross Ulbricht has a life sentence. That's why Private Manning has a 35-year prison sentence, because those individuals, they stood up against the state. They disobeyed the state. They didn't have actual victims. They disobeyed the state. Those are people that are using open protocols on the internet. Let me now stop ranting, get back into the article. The announcement here continues. It says law enforcement will pursue criminals no matter what technology they're using, and how law enforcement does this can affect an open technology. As a result, it's in everyone's interest, law enforcement, industry, and those of us who want to keep the technology free and open, to make sure that law enforcement understands how the technology works and what can and can't be done with it, and what are the opportunities and limits it presents for their investigations. So let me, again, pause. This is mid-paragraph and say, I don't recall ever hearing anyone say, we need to explain to law enforcement how email works. We need to explain to law enforcement how PayPal works. We need to explain to law enforcement how fill-in-the-blank internet application works. No, but for some reason, you've got these people saying, we need to explain to law enforcement how Bitcoin works. They continue to that end today, and of course this was dated October 22nd, so nearly a week ago. To that end, we announced the formation of the Blockchain Alliance, a forum for law enforcement and regulators to ask questions of each other and to share information, and for law enforcement and regulators to get technical assistance from industry on understanding the blockchain. So, we're creating this organization to hold hands with law enforcement and do whatever they want us to. They're not saying that per se, but that's pretty much what's going to happen. The announcement continues. Jason Weinstein, a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General in charge of cybercrime investigations at the Department of Justice and a member of the advisory board of Coin Center, BitFury, and the Chamber of Digital Commerce, will serve as director of the Blockchain Alliance. So right off the bat, you've got this thing being created by someone that is former law enforcement, and they're adding other entities into this Blockchain Alliance. They say industry participants include Coin Center, the Chamber of Digital Commerce, MIT Media Lab's Digital Currency Initiative, Bitfinex, BitFury, BitGo, BitNet, BitPay, Bitstamp, Blockchain, Block, that's BLOQ, Circle, Coinbase, CoinEx, ItBit, Kraken, Noble Markets, and Zapo. Zapo spelled X-A-P-O. Now, you may or may not have noticed that I am no longer promoting Coinbase. And it's because of their alliance here with the Blockchain Alliance that is connected in with the Department of Justice and the FBI and the U.S. Marshals and the Secret Service and the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Division of Homeland Security and the Commodities Future Trading Commission. Yes, all of those government agencies that I just mentioned are also part of this Blockchain Alliance. The announcement continues. The Alliance will be a resource for law enforcement where they can feel comfortable asking technical questions to some of the brightest minds in this space. It's also a resource for the blockchain community to understand the interest and concerns of law enforcement and regulators about the blockchain and its applications. You know, I'm not interested at all as a Bitcoin user, not just as someone that doesn't want the federal government to exist, but as a Bitcoin user. I am not interested at all in whether or not law enforcement feels comfortable with me using the currency that I decide that I want to use. I'm not harming anybody. I'm not creating any victims. I'm not doing any actual offenses to people. And really, I'm not doing anything criminal unless they wind up creating some weird statute or ordinance saying you can't use Bitcoin, in which case, okay, yeah, I guess I will be doing something criminal, but I don't really care. The article continues. Some of this is happening now on an ad hoc basis, that being the law enforcement getting answers to questions from the brightest minds in the space. But the Blockchain Alliance will be a one-stop resource and a known forum for discussion. To be clear, they say, the Blockchain Alliance is not a backdoor for the government to get information about companies or their customers. And when you have to say, we're not a backdoor, you're a backdoor. The protection of privacy and civil liberties is paramount, they write. The discussion between industry and government through the Blockchain Alliance will not be about particular investigations or targets. Rather, they will be higher-level discussions about typologies, trends, and technical issues. The participating companies will not share information about their customers except as required by law. So, yeah, we're going to bend over if the government tells us to. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Don't forget this Friday afternoon, 45, and that's the convention. You can get tickets to that convention.